In part one, I gave you a first look inside ADX Florence and details of the two murders that prompted the first action of creating the U.S. First Level 6 Supermax prison. In part two, we'll dive deeper into the Supermax facility, discussing the violence, the procedures for everyday life, ways to grow closer to human interaction, and the profiling of some of the most dangerous inmates in history residing at ADX Florence. Security levels of housing units inside ADX Florence are specified. Starting with Range 13 is ADX Florence's most restrictive housing unit. The unit contains a 4-cell wing of Special Housing Unit, or called SHU. The unit is the most isolated area within Florence ADX. The U.S. Department of Justice, Office of the Inspector General, reported a psychologist at Florence ADX describing solitary confinement on Range 13, stating, "You have no contact. You don't speak to anyone. And it's a form of torture on some level." The Control Unit Bravo unit is the most secure housing unit, containing 78 cells. Inmates are referred to the unit based on their behavior incidents and are provided with an opportunity for a hearing prior to placement. Inmates in the Bravo unit are always in isolation, including their recreation time, and locked in their cells 23 to 24 hours a day. Inmates must maintain a clean jacket each month to maintain their clear conduct. They do not receive any days counted as served within that month if they fail. The Special Housing Unit, SHU or Charlie Unit, at the time of inspection by the DOJ in 2017, the Charlie Unit was used as the housing unit for newly arrived prisoners and additional individuals from the Control Unit, according to staff at the time. At most facilities, the SHU is a lockdown housing unit for inmates who have been sanctioned for disciplinary infractions or for inmates who need extra protection. In 2016, Florence ADMAX claimed to have stopped using the unit for those purposes, citing they could impede disciplinary sanctions on any unit since the entire facility is always on lockdown. However, later after the inspection, the CIC received reports that inmates are still taken from their current housing units and moved to the SHU to serve time for disciplinary sanctions. The Special Housing Unit, Charlie Unit, is also called the Hole, where prisoners are held for 22 to 24 hours a day. The General Population Units, Delta, Echo, Fox, and Golf units, operate similarly to the Control Unit, where more privileges can be earned, such as up to 2 hours of out-of-cell time per weekday. In general population, inmates are isolated in their cells for at least 22 hours per day. The step-down units, Joker and step-down Bravo, is where inmates are still confined to their cells for most of the day, but are permitted limited but direct contact with other inmates. The units are phased out steps from the most restrictive to general population units. And the step-down units, the cells are on 3 sides of the unit with a common area in the middle, and the cells open directly into the common area. Televisions and showers are in the common area instead of individual cells. The Kilo unit contains an exercise stationary bike for use. The front side of the units are barred by a wall separating the inmate and officers' common areas. Inmates walk up to the barred wall to receive their food trays and can leave books on the bars to be exchanged for new books requested from the library. And the step-down units, the law library computer, is in the common area and contains several tables with attached chairs. The step-down program prepares inmates to live in a less restrictive unit in the prison. According to the staff, the step-down program is designed as a 2-year process. Inmates need 1 year of clear conduct, phase 1, prior to being placed into the Joker unit, which is phase 2. Inmates spend 6 months in the unit until being placed into USP Florence High. Once that stage is completed, the final stages of the process carry on at USP Florence High, where the inmate is housed and spends 3 to 6 months before moving to another institution. The Joker unit is an intermediate unit, where all inmates who will be released or transferred from Florence ADX must continue through the unit as the first stage of the step-down process is mentioned previously. Each inmate undergoes a biannually screening by a multidisciplinary committee. By completing several programs, inmates could lessen their time in the Joker unit. But if discipline issues arise, inmates may spend more time on the Joker unit than assessed. If the inmate is making positive progress, they will experience the very first trust building with inmate interaction without restraints. The Joker unit contains 32 cells. Inmates are separated by 4 different groups, and only inmates in the same group can have recreation together. Step Down Unit Bravo B, also known as the Special Security Unit SSU, houses inmates in phases 3 or 4 for the Supermax Step Down program. All 4 steps must be completed to be transferred out of the SSU. Upon completion of phase 4, the inmate can be transferred to another program with fewer restrictions. Although ADX Florence is the first of its kind in the United States Federal Bureau of Prisons and was constructed to house the most threatening, dangerous criminals, despite its structure, there have been physical altercations and violent confrontations inside the facility, from fights to murder. The first murder in Florence ADX in 2005 ties back to the Mexican Mafia, one of the most powerful prison gangs in the penal system. The gang is a predominantly Mexican-American prison gang and criminal organization in the United States and has no origins in Mexico. Manuel Tati Torrez, a high-ranking Mexican Mafia member, was prosecuted under the RICO Act along with 27 other members. Torrez was connected and led the gang's drug enterprise. Under the RICO, he was charged with allegations involving homicide, assault, extortion, and possession of drugs and weapons. Manuel Tati Torrez was a huge arrest. He was suspected of ordering various amounts of hits. Torrez pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 13 years at Lompoc Federal Prison, an hour away north of Santa Barbara. Upon entering Lompoc, he was able to take control of the yard due to his status. Officials witnessed his power and felt he needed to be separated from his LaM counterparts. He was then transferred to ADX Florence. After only 1 year at the Florence ADX facility, Torrez would be the Supermax prison's first homicide. Richard Shuko Santiago, an inmate also transferred from Lompoc Federal Prison with a lengthy rap sheet, was found in his cell with Torrez's blood on his shoes and clothes. Officers entered Santiago's cell as he tried to wash away the evidence from his clothing in his toilet. Santiago and another inmate, Silvestre Chacali Riviera, were able to find an area in the yard where the camera lenses didn't reach far enough to record. Riviera camouflaged Santiago, where he was able to strike 60-plus-year-old Torrez, dazing him as he fell back. Santiago and Riviera brutally punched and kicked Torrez in the ribs and head for 2 minutes straight. The attackers took breaks, with Santiago even stopping, taking a sip of water, and returning to deliver more deadly blows. 4 minutes later, guards arrived at the yard where they witnessed a man beaten so badly he was unrecognizable. Mexican mafia leader Adolf Champ Reynoso was also imprisoned at ADX Florence. The FBI agent who investigated and the original prosecutor of Torrez's case built a theory that Torrez's murder was a sanctioned hit due to him backdooring a fellow Mexican mafia gang member, Victor Victorio Murillo. Torrez taxed Murillo's dealers and is rumored to have discussed with fellow gang member Charles Woody of killing Murillo to take over his drug territory. Murillo was shot to death in a dirt parking lot outside of a small farming town in Visalia, where he resided. But only Mexican mafia gang member Charles Woody was charged with Murillo's murder. Santiago and Riviera were both convicted of first-degree murder, received life sentences, and are still inmates at ADX Florence. A second murder inside of ADX Florence occurred in 2005 when Dominic Stewart, at the time age 36, and James Duckett, at the time age 46, murdered Gregory Joyner while housed in the U.S. Bureau of Prisons step-down unit at the Supermax prison. On May 26, 2005, Stewart and Duckett murdered Joyner by Stewart punching and stomping on his head and neck, while Duckett held Joyner back during the attack. Duckett released Joyner from his grip, but Stewart continued the savage attack. The blows Joyner endured caused severe brain damage. Joyner was transported to Parkview Medical Center and died 5 days later from his injuries. Stewart was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 30 years to life, and Duckett took a plea deal, pleading guilty to assault, and was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison for his role in the murder. This murder hasn't been publicly discussed. I only found it due to a press release and an archival article on the FBI site of Colorado. I couldn't find images of the assailants or the victim, but I did include the press release and I was able to find court documents. If you are interested in reading about the case in full, I'll put a link to those documents as well in the description. A third murder occurred inside ADX Florence on September 19th, 2020. Ishmael Petty, a former bank robber and killer, murdered LaMarcus Hillard, a drug dealer, inside the Level 6 prison. Petty has a lengthy criminal history, including several convictions for armed robbery. In 1998, Petty pleaded guilty to armed robbery at the People's Bank of Okolona, Mississippi. He was sentenced to 420 months, equaling 35 years, for a highly sophisticated armed bank robbery where he was wearing a police officer's uniform. Petty murdered his 71-year-old cellmate at the United States Penitentiary, Prologue in Louisiana. He received a life sentence and was moved to ADX Florence in 2002. On September 11, 2013, two BOP librarians and a case manager were brutally attacked by Petty at ADX Florence. The librarians were delivering books to Petty's cell. Petty hid in an area between the outer and inner doors, wearing self-made body armor made from cardboard box-like material and armed with a shank. Petty assaulted the two librarians, using his much larger size to severely injure the older of the two librarians. The caseworker intervened to stop the attack. Petty used the homemade shank and hot sauce in the assault and managed to get a hold of two batons. The three BOP workers were transported to a local hospital where two were released and the third kept for additional treatment. The third BOP employee received permanent damage in the attack. Petty was convicted on July 14, 2015, on 3 counts of assault, resisting and impeding a federal employee using a dangerous weapon. He received a 60-year sentence for the attack. I am baffled on how he was able to accumulate these materials considering the extensive lockdown of the inmates, and he has not exemplified good behavior since he's been there. So I'm just wondering what kind of trust level he was extended. A grand jury posed a 2 count indictment against Petty in April 20 of 25. According to court documents, Petty murdered LaMarcus Hillard. Now, LaMarcus Hillard is also Walter Lee Gilbert. Hillard was found dead in his cell and Petty outside his cell. Hillard died of strangulation, and the literature was fashioned out of twisted bedsheet. Hillard was found bound at the hands and feet with plastic sheeting over his head while being strangled by Petty in an adjacent room. The ligature was reportedly fed through a food slot. Hillard was originally serving a 25-year sentence for possession of cocaine with the intent to distribute in Hinds County, Mississippi. I am completely bewildered how this murder happened. I don't see how this could have taken place without help from others or whether the staff was completely just caught off guard. I'm not blaming any individuals for, participating in the crime because there's no evidence of that. Nobody else was charged in Mr. Hilliard's death. But I find it extremely bizarre. However, the murder did happen during C-19, so there may have been some strange movement taking place in the facility. But I still find it extremely hard to fathom how he was inside his cell, bound by his hands and feet, and how he was strangled through a food opening. It's where they receive their food trays. I mean, obviously it's possible because it happened. I mean, that is the story that we have been given. That's what's been written. But I truly believe it's more to it. If you have a theory about what you think happened, please leave it in the comments. I would love to know what you think may have happened. And let's have a discussion about it. Hillard was also jailed for manslaughter in Sunflower County, Mississippi, which garnered him an additional 20 years for the crime. After committing the notorious murder of Boris Harper at the Mississippi State Penitentiary Parchman, where he stabbed Harper with a self-made spear from a mop stick through the heart while still inside his cell. Harper was outside Hilliard's cell cleaning the floors in Unit 32. The attack was attributed to gang-related reasons. Hillard moved to ADX Florence on December 4th, 2007. Images of Petty are extremely hard to find. I haven't found any on the internet, but more than likely they could contribute to the long history that he has, criminal history, and him being in federal custody since 98-99. And the Bureau is very guarded concerning the images that they release. They are in complete control. So that also contributes to the lack of images of Petty. Other controversies have faced the Supermax prison. There has been an unfavorable outlook on the way ADX Florence uses confinement. Critics have made claims that the use of solitary cells has made a negative, long-lasting effect on inmates' mental health. There have also been claims of misdiagnosis of inmates and abuse. To date, there have been 8 suicides at the facility. A class action lawsuit, Cunningham versus Federal Bureau of Prisons, and the officials who run ADX Florence, was filed. This was a landmark class action lawsuit citing abuse and failing to treat prisoners with serious mental illness. The lawsuit changed policies. The lawsuit addressed the BOP violating the Eighth Amendment by placing mentally ill inmates in extreme long-term isolation without adequate or sometimes any mental health care. The lawsuit found that catastrophic deficiencies in mental health care where inmates with severe documented illnesses were ignored or subjected to poor conditions. The settlement in 2016 brought about change. The BOP did not admit to constitutional violations, but agreed to a comprehensive settlement, mandating screening procedures for mental health, treatment improvements by lifting the ban of psychotropic medication, and the control unit was lifted. Now, confidential spaces for therapy were required. Mental health staffing was doubled at ADX. Also, inmates with severe mental health issues were transferred to appropriate mental health facilities instead of being held in long-term solitary confinement. There have been some of the most dangerous criminals entering the facility and becoming inmates of ADX Florence. They range from murderers, terrorists, gang leaders, and organized crime members. Here is a list of the most infamous still residing in the ADX Supermax prison. Joshua Schilt, a former CIA employee responsible for the largest data breach leak in history of the Central Intelligence Agency. The Vault 7 leak made documents available to WikiLeaks, exposing the CIA's extremely vast cyber arsenal, including hacking tools, the Weeping Angel, a tool that could turn Samsung smart TVs into listening devices to record conversations even when shut off. Encryption bypass developed tools to bypass the encryption of apps like WhatsApp, Signal, or Telegram by capturing audio and message traffic directly from the device before it was encrypted. False flag operations. The Marble Framework was a tool the CIA used to obscure and disguise the true origins of cyber attacks, making it difficult to trace these attacks back to the actual perpetrator, giving them the ability to misattribute to any nation. Vehicle control documents suggested the CIA researched methods to remotely control modern vehicle systems for potential nearly undetectable assassinations. Eric Rudolph is a domestic terrorist who committed a series of bombings across southern United States between 1996 and 1998. In 1996, Rudolph carried out the 1996 Centennial Olympic Park bombing in Atlanta. Rudolph planted a pipe bomb packed with nails that killed one woman and injured 111 people. He bombed medical facilities, one in Sandy Springs, Georgia, and another in Birmingham, Alabama. The Birmingham explosion killed a police officer and critically injured a nurse. Rudolph bombed an LGBTQ plus community nightclub, Other Side Lounge, injuring 5 people. Rudolph also targeted first responders. Rudolph planted secondary devices timed to detonate after law enforcement and medical personnel arrived to help victims of his first bombing. To avoid the death penalty, Rudolph disclosed locations of over 250 pounds of dynamite he buried in the mountains. Kaboni Savage is an American drug dealer, organized crime leader, and a mass murderer. A former boxer, he is the first person from Philadelphia in modern history to receive a federal death sentence. Savage, while in prison on drug charges, ordered the firebombing of a house where a federal witness lived. The firebombing targeted a previous associate, Eugene Twin Coleman, who decided to testify against Savage. The brutal explosion killed 6 people: Marcella Coleman, age 54, Tamika Nash, age 33, Sean Anthony Rodriguez, age 15, Taj Portia, age 12, Khadijah Nash, age 10, and DeMar Jenkins, age 15 months. Savage was convicted on 12 counts of murder and 8 of racketeering, witness tampering resulting in death, and 5 counts of money laundering, and a host of other charges. Since Kaboni's federal death sentence has been commuted to life. Dairo Antonio Usuga, better known as Ontario, was convicted as the head leader of the Clan del Golfo, Gulf Clan. The Clan del Golfo is one of the world's most violent and powerful drug trafficking organizations. Ontario was sentenced to 45 years in prison for crimes compared to those of Pablo Escobar. Ontario ruled a massive cocaine trafficking ring that moved nearly 100,000 kilograms of cocaine to the U.S. His organization controlled around 30% of all cocaine exported from Colombia. He also was responsible for sanctioned hits on Colombian police officers, military officials, and civilians. He offered cash bounties on police officers and soldiers. He recruited minors as foot soldiers. He has also been accused of being involved in human trafficking, also concerning kids and SA. After his capture in 2021, his cartel ordered a stay home or die strike across parts of Colombia in enabling regions' functionality through violence and intimidation. Terry Nichols, co-conspirator in the Oklahoma City bombing. Nichols acquired materials using an alias, purchasing large quantities of ammonium nitrate fertilizer, a key component of the bomb. He, along with fellow co-conspirator Timothy McVeigh, stole cases of Torrez explosives and hundreds of blasting caps from a rock quarry. Nichols helped to mix the fertilizer and racing fuel to create the explosive mixture inside a rented Ryder truck the day before the attack. Nichols provided the getaway car and storage units to hide the materials. He was convicted at the federal level of conspiracy to use a weapon of mass destruction and 8 counts of involuntary manslaughter for the deaths of federal agents. To ensure that he would never see the light of day again, he was convicted at the state level for the 161 remaining deaths and received 161 consecutive life terms without parole. This is the longest prison sentence ever given to an individual. Ramzi Yousef was the primary architect of the February 26, 1993 attack on the North Tower in New York City. He directed the detonation of a 1,300-pound urea nitrate truck bomb he assembled to detonate in the tower's underground parking garage. His intent was to have the North Tower topple into the South Tower in hopes of killing potentially tens of thousands of people. The blast killed 6 people, including a pregnant woman, and injured more than 1,000 others. Yousef fled the U.S., joining his uncle, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who would also go on to be the mastermind of the 911 attacks. Yousef joined his uncle in a massive three-phase plan discovered in the Philippines in 1995. The plot involved planting virtually undetectable liquid bombs on 11 to 12 U.S. commercial airliners flying from Asia to blow up mid-flight. Yousef attempted and completed a test run, planting a bomb on a Philippine Airlines flight 434, killing a Japanese passenger and injured 10 other people. The plan included the assassination of Pope John Paul II. The final phase of the plan was to hijack a plane and fly it into the CIA headquarters. Yousef was convicted in two different trials. Captured in 1995, he was convicted and the judge recommended he remain in solitary confinement for life to prevent further contact with the outside world. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman is the former Mexican drug lord and former leader of the Sinaloa cartel, one of the world's most powerful drug trafficking organizations ever established. El Chapo Guzman is known for smuggling massive amounts of drugs and high-profile prison escapes. He was extradited to the U.S. in 2017. Guzman was considered the most powerful drug lord of his era. He operated for over 13 years and famously escaping from Mexican prisons twice in 2001 and 2015 before being recaptured in 2016. El Chapo is believed to be responsible for thousands of deaths linked to the drug trade. Guzman's trial was one of the most notorious cases ever tried in the United States. Evidence presented during the 12-week spectacle included details of a continuing criminal enterprise, CCE, which was the most significant charge containing 26 separate drug-related violations and one murder. Massive drug trafficking details Guzman's distribution of more than 1 million kilograms of cocaine and hundreds of tons of heroin, marijuana, methamphetamine into the United States. Evidence of widespread violence and murder revealed he directed an army of Ciceros, hitmen, to kidnap, torture, and execute rival gang members and potentially informants. In some instances, he was known to carry out some of the acts, including an instance where he reportedly beat two men and ordered them to be buried alive. Guzman laundered over $12.6 billion through a complex network of shell companies. He also paid millions of dollars in bribes to high-ranking Mexican officials, police, and military personnel to facilitate his operations and avoid capture. El Chapo was convicted and is serving a sentence of life plus 30 years in ADX Florence. He is on special administrative measures due to his history of escapes and running his cartel from behind bars in Mexico. The measures virtually eliminate his contact with the outside world and inmates to halt his rule from behind bars. Former inmates of ADX Florence include Larry Hoover and Timothy McVeigh. Larry Hoover, King Larry, resided at ADX Florence until his federal sentence was commuted to life without parole. Hoover was then transferred to the Illinois Department of Corrections to serve the remainder of his sentence. He was the co-founder and former leader of the Gangster Disciples, who grew to become one of the most largest, powerful, and feared organizations in United States history. Hoover founded the GDs in Chicago during the late 1960s. At the organization's peak, they had an estimated 30 100,000 members across 35 states and generated over 100 million in annual revenue through drug trafficking, extortion, and money laundering. Timothy McVeigh, co-conspirator and domestic terrorist who masterminded and perpetrated the Oklahoma City bombing on April 19, 1995. The bomb killed 168 people, some children, and injured 684 more. The bomb destroyed one-third of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. It is one of the deadliest terrorist acts in history. He was convicted of 8 counts of murder, use of a weapon of mass destruction resulting in death, destruction by explosives resulting in death. McVeigh was housed at ADX Florence and then transferred to the United States Penitentiary in Torrez, Indiana, which houses the federal death row. He was executed June 11, 2001. ADX Florence Supermax was created out of necessity, housing the most dangerous criminals known to man. Described as a tomb and inescapable, inmates settle in, accept their fate, and deal with the sound of solitary. Some hope and pray for the step-down program, a chance at human interaction. If you are lucky enough to go home, you are forever changed. Lifers know this is the end for them, and they'll only exist in their minds. There is no escape from the quiet place. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell so you won't miss any upcoming uploads. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other.